In 1965, a Standard Oil mechanic named Earl kept a single blue and yellow can on his bench in Dayton, Ohio, and a farmer drove 80 miles to have him use it. The truck had a frozen brake adjuster, a seized hood latch, and a starter bolt 3 other men had already rounded off. Earl did not reach for a torch. He laid a bead of spray on each, drank half a cup of coffee, and backed all 3 loose by hand before the cup was empty. The bill was $1.50. The dealership had quoted $90. That trick is number 12 on this list. Earl never called it a trick. He called it knowing what the can was for. We did not lose this knowledge because the can stopped working. It is still on every shelf, unchanged since 1953, when a small outfit in San Diego mixed it on the 40th try to keep rust off rocket skins. By 1958, it was in every service bay in the country. A station man in 1965 used it 40 times a day and saved his customers a fortune in parts that did not need replacing. Then the full-service station died, the man in the gray uniform with it, and the knowledge went quiet. We kept the can. We forgot the hands. Number 19 freed a part the dealer wanted $90 to replace for a 30-second spray and a 5-minute wait. Number 7 turned a seized linkage that had 3 shops stumped into a 4-minute fix. And number 3, the full chassis spray down every station once did before winter, has all but vanished because a customer whose car never rusts does not come back to buy the part rust would have ruined. These 25 tricks were not about a spray can. They were about a man who understood that most of what gets replaced was never broken. It was only stuck, only dry, only wet, only rusted at one point a dime of penetrant could reach. The dealer sold you the whole part. Earl freed the one you had. Hit that subscribe button, and let us count down the 25 lost garage tricks. 1965, service station mechanics used WD-40 for that saved customers thousands. Number 25, freeing a seized engine bolt without snapping the stud. Not a brute force job, a patience job. You laid the spray down the threads where the bolt met the block, then tapped the head twice to carry it in. You waited. 10 minutes, sometimes 20, while the penetrant crept past the rust. Then you broke it with a steady pull, never a snap. A fleet mechanic in 1962 saved a half-day teardown on a manifold bolt that would have meant pulling the head. Engines of the era ran coarse steel bolts rusted into iron blocks. The penetrant reached where no socket could. The wrench did not free the bolt. The weighting did. Number 24, loosening rusted lug nuts on the roadside. The difference between changing a tire and waiting for a tow. You sprayed around each stud where the nut had rusted to the threads, gave it a minute, then leaned on the wrench. The nut that would have sheared the stud came loose. A traveling salesman in 1964 kept a can in the trunk and changed a flat in the rain while a stranger sat stranded nearby. Steel studs and steel nuts, no anti-seize from the factory, rusted together every winter the salt touched. A snapped stud was a toe and a new hub. A spray and a minute was neither. Number 23, penetrating a rusted exhaust clamp before the weld. The trick that turned a muffler job from an hour into 10 minutes. You soaked the U-bolt clamps where the pipe joined the muffler, both sides, and let it sit while you raised the car. The nuts that always rounded off came loose instead. A muffler man in 1963 freed a whole exhaust without cutting a bolt, sparing the customer the new pipe a snapped clamp forces. Exhaust steel rusted hardest of anything under a car, baked and salted the same season. The torch was the slow way. The can was the fast one. Number 22, freeing a sticky choke linkage. A choke hung halfway open ran the engine, rich and thirsty for miles. You sprayed the choke plate shaft and the pivot, then worked it open and shut by hand until it swung free and snapped closed clean. A Gulf attendant in 1962 cured a commuter's all-winter thirst with one spray on a gummed choke. Carburetor linkages gummed with fuel varnish, and a stuck one wasted a tank a month. The carburetor was not worn, it was only stuck. There is a fortune in that difference. Number 21, freeing a sticky throttle linkage. The flat spot under your foot that no tune-up ever cured. You laid penetrant on every pivot from pedal to carburetor, then blipped the throttle a dozen times until the return came back smooth. A station mechanic in 1961 fixed a hesitation a man had paid 2 shops to chase with one spray. These throttle linkages ran a dozen joints, each a place to bind, none sealed against grit. It was not the engine that hesitated, it was the linkage that could not keep up. Number 20, quieting and freeing a squeaking door. The small annoyance that turned into a seized hinge by the next winter. You sprayed each hinge pin and the latch, swung the door a few times, and wiped the runoff. The squeak died, the latch closed soft. A station man in 1960 did every regular's doors while he pumped gas, and their hinges never wore loose. Steel pins in steel barrels, no grease fitting, dried out and wore oval if you let them squeal. A squeak was a warning. The man who answered it never bought a hinge. Number 19, drying a flooded electrical connector to cure an intermittent gremlin. Water in a plug is a fault that comes and goes, and it drives a man to the dealer. You pulled the connector, sprayed it to push the moisture out, and pressed it back together. The penetrant displaced the water the way it was built to, and the dead circuit woke. A Sinclair man in 1963 cured a headlight that died in every rain that the dealer wanted $90 to fix. The formula was water displacement first, lubricant second. That was the whole reason it existed. The wire was never broken. It was only wet. The dealer charged for the difference. Number 18, freeing a frozen door lock in January. The 30-second fix for the problem that left you standing in the cold. You sprayed straight into the lock cylinder, worked the key in and out twice, and the tumblers that had iced shut turned free. A garage man in 1961 kept a can by the door all winter and freed half the town's locks for nothing. Lock cylinders held water that froze overnight, and a forced key snapped off in the barrel. A snapped key in a frozen lock was a locksmith and a tow. A spray was a turn of the wrist. Number 17, cleaning road tar and bug grime off paint and chrome. The detailing trick that saved the finish from the acid underneath. You sprayed it onto the tar, let it soften a minute, then wiped it away with a soft rag. No scrubbing. The chrome came up bright, the paint clean. A full-service man in 1962 cleaned the front clip of every car he fueled because tar pitted chrome by spring. Road tar and bug acid ate into chrome and lacquer if they baked on through a summer. The wax protected the paint. The can saved it from what the wax could not. There is a generation of hands disappearing, and nobody is counting them. The men who knew 40 uses for one can are nearly all gone. Their first question was never what to replace, but what to free. The youngest are past 80. They did not write any of this down. They kept it in hands that knew when a bolt was ready to turn and ears that knew a dry hinge from a worn one. When they die, the can stays on the shelf and the knowing goes into the ground. Picture a man who could look at a seized, rusted mess 3 shops called scrap and hand it back, working for $1. That cannot be downloaded. The chain ran from one bay to the next, apprentice to apprentice, for 50 years. Then the stations closed and the parts counter took over. We are writing it down before the last of these men are gone. Number 16, freeing a seized brake adjuster. The star wheel rusted solid, and it turned a free brake job into a parts job. You sprayed the adjuster slot behind the backing plate, waited, and worked the star wheel until it turned free and the shoes set right. A service mechanic in 1960 freed all 4 adjusters on a widow's coupe for a spray, where the dealer wanted 4 new assemblies. Brake adjusters lived in the wettest place on the car and seized first. The adjuster was not gone. It was frozen. $90 rode on knowing the difference. Number 15, freeing a stuck parking brake cable. The seized cable had dragged a rear shoe and eaten fuel and lining. You sprayed both ends where the cable entered the housing, worked the lever a dozen times, and the cable, rusted in its sleeve, pulled free. A station man in 1961 freed a dragging cable that had cooked a man's rear brakes, saving shoes and drum both. Parking brake cables ran the length of the underbody, exposed to every mile of salt. A new cable was a morning's labor. A spray was 5 minutes and a working brake. Number 14, freeing a stuck speedometer cable. The bouncing needle and squeal meant a dry cable about to break. You disconnected the cable, pulled the inner core, sprayed it down its length, and fed it back. The needle that jumped and the squeal both went silent. A garage man in 1962 cured a salesman's screaming speedometer in 30 seconds when the parts house wanted a new assembly. Speedometer cables were a steel core in a sheath, and a dry one whipped, bounced, and snapped. A snapped cable was a part and an hour. A spray was the part saved. Number 13, lubricating a sticky window regulator. The crank that fought you and the glass that crept down on its own. You sprayed the regulator gears and the channel runs, then ran the glass up and down. The crank turned easy, and the window held where you left it. A station man in 1960 freed a regular's stubborn window in the time it took to fill the tank. Window channels packed with grit, the grease dried hard, and a forced crank stripped the gears. A stripped regulator meant a door panel off and a new mechanism. A spray was a crank that turned. Number 12, freeing a stuck hood latch and dry trunk hinges. Earl's farmer job. The latch that trapped you out of your own engine. You sprayed the latch and the release cable end, worked it open and shut, and hit the trunk hinges too. The hood that fought you popped clean. That Standard Oil man in 1965 freed 3 frozen mechanisms on one farm truck before his coffee went cold. Hood latches caught road spray and rusted shut, locking you out. A seized latch was a pried hood and bent sheet metal. A spray was a working release. Number 11, protecting spark plug threads and boots. The trick that kept the next tune-up from becoming a cylinder head repair. You put the lightest film on clean plug threads before they went in, and a touch on the boots so they pulled free instead of tearing. A tune-up man in 1958 never seized a plug because he knew a galled thread meant a stripped head. Steel plugs cold welded into the head over thousands of heat cycles if they went in dry. A seized plug could pull the threads from the head. The film was insurance against a ruined engine. Number 10, cleaning corroded battery terminals. The green crust that left you dead in the driveway. You scraped the terminals clean, then sprayed a light coat over the posts and clamps to hold the corrosion back. The hard starting and dim lights cleared at once. A station attendant in 1963 treated every battery he checked because a clean terminal started all winter. Lead terminals corroded fast in the heat, choking the current where it all passed through. A corroded terminal looked like a dead battery and got one bought. It was only crust. Number 9, freeing every stuck hinge and pivot the eye forgets. The hood, the trunk, the seat tracks, the glove box, the vent windows. You went around the car and hit every joint that moved, working each until it ran free and silent. 10 minutes, a whole car set right. A full-service man in 1962 did this on every trade-in because a car that moved easy felt worth more. Every pivot on a 1960s car was bare steel, and bare steel that moves dries out and binds. It was not one repair. It was a car reminded how to move. Follow the money, because there is a reason no one taught you 40 uses for a $1 can. The American auto parts and dealer service business runs past $150 billion a year, and most of it is replacement. A frozen latch, a seized adjuster, a corroded terminal, a wet connector. Everyone gets sold as a new part to a customer who cannot tell stuck from broken. The right to repair movement has fought that for years, and in 2021, it won a partial victory in Massachusetts, forcing automakers to share their data. The industry spent over $25 million fighting it, and is fighting still. A customer who knows most of what fails is only frozen buys a $1 can, not a $90 part. The knowledge was not lost by accident. It was never profitable. Number 8, quieting a chassis squeak at the bushings. The creak over every bump that the dealer called worn suspension. You sprayed the sway bar bushings, the spring shackles, and the control arm pivots where rubber met steel. The squeak that sounded like a $100 repair went silent. A service mechanic in 1961 quieted a man's whole front end for a spray, after a shop quoted him new bushings all around. Rubber bushings dried and gripped the steel they pivoted on, and the grip squealed like a failing part. The suspension was not worn, it was dry. The dealer never made that distinction out loud. Number 7, freeing a stuck carburetor linkage that 3 shops could not fix. The seized fast idle cam and choke pull-off ran an engine ragged. You sprayed every external pivot, the fast idle cam, the pull-off arm, the secondary linkage, and worked each by hand until the whole assembly moved as one. A fleet tuner in 1959 took a van that 2 dealers wanted to replace the carburetor on and freed the seized linkage in 4 minutes. The carburetor wore a dozen external joints, all exposed, all able to gum solid with varnish and grit. They wanted to replace the carburetor. He freed it. That is the whole story of this list. Number 6, protecting the bare tools in the drawer from rust. The trick that saved a mechanic's own livelihood. You wiped a light film over your wrenches, your sockets, your good chrome before you closed the box, and the rust that ruined a careless man's tools never touched yours. A garage man in 1960 kept his father's wrenches bright as new, wiped down every night for 30 years. Tool steel rusted in any damp shop, and a pitted wrench was a tool turning to scrap. A good set of tools was a year's wages. The film that saved them cost nothing. Number 5, underbody rust protection before the salt. The fall ritual that bought a car 5 extra years. You sprayed the frame seams, the rocker channels, the bolt heads, and the brake and fuel lines before the first snow. The penetrant left a film salt could not bite through. A station man in 1962 sprayed his regulars' undercarriages every October, and their cars outlasted the neighbors. Road salt ate American steel from below, and a rusted frame was a car gone before its engine ever tired. Rust was not weather. It was neglect. The can was the answer to both. Number 4, the wet distributor cap. The roadside save when an engine drowned in a puddle and died. You pulled the cap, sprayed the inside and the wires to push the water out, dried the points, and the engine that had stalled in a flooded street fired right up. A traveling man in 1964 restarted his own car in a thunderstorm while 3 others sat with hoods up, waiting on a tow. Ignition systems of the era were open to the weather, and a splash of water shorted the spark to ground. The engine was not dead. It was drowned. One displaces water. He knew which. Number 3, the full chassis spray down before winter. Every grease point, every pivot, every bare joint done in one pass. You put the car on the lift in October and went over it end to end. The steering joints, the brake hardware, the cables, the linkages, the hinges, every place, steel touched steel or weather touched metal. A service mechanic in 1965 did this for $14.95, and his regulars never saw a seized part all winter. Every moving point needed it, and the man who hit them all at once prevented the failures the year otherwise sold. It was not a service. It was a winter that never got its teeth into the car. Number 2, fogging the ignition before a wet trip. Prevention, not rescue. The drive that never stalled because the water never got in. You lifted the cap before a long haul, gave the inside and the wires a light coat, and sealed the water out before it shorted anything. The engine ran through the storm that the others stalled in. A long haul man in 1965 crossed 3 wet states without a miss, while drivers who skipped it sat steaming on the shoulder. A drowned ignition was the most common rain day breakdown there was, and the easiest one to prevent. The rescue made a story. The prevention made the trip. He chose the trip. Number 1, the thin film on bare metal before the rust ever started. That is all. The one habit underneath every other trick on this list. You wiped a light coat on any bare steel that mattered. The tools, the hardware, the exposed lines, the bright work. You did it before it had a reason to corrode, not after the rust came. Before. Most parts a man ever replaced, he replaced because a film of rust would have stopped them. Your grandfather did this without calling it anything. He called it taking care of things, a lifetime of it, and he bought half the parts his neighbor did, same car. We replaced the man who prevented things with a parts counter that sells the cure. The cure costs $90. The prevention cost a rag. Number 1 is not a trick. It is the habit underneath every other secret on this list. None of these tricks required a special part, a sealed module, or a single thing the dealer's counter sells. They required a willingness to look at something stuck, rusted, wet, or seized, and believe without anyone's permission it could be saved instead of scrapped. That belief was the default setting of every service station in America. Not confidence born from training. Confidence born from intimacy, from enough hours with one blue can that you knew its 40 uses the way a farmer knows weather. It kept cars running for $1 the dealer had condemned for 90 in the hands of men who never finished high school. We did not lose the can. It is on every shelf, the same as it was in 1953. We lost the hands that knew a frozen bolt from a broken one, and the ears that heard a dry hinge before it seized. We lost the man in the gray uniform who freed your hood latch while he pumped your gas and never charged you. He is gone now, and most of what he knew went with him. The parts counter counts on that. It would rather sell you the whole assembly than let you remember the dime of penetrant that would have saved it. But not all of it is buried. Some of it is in this video, written down at last, before the last of those men were gone. The next time something on your car sticks, drags, or quits in the rain, do not call it broken yet. Reach for the can. Give it a minute. The craft is not dead. It waits on a shelf for someone to pick it back up.